Hey, you're listening to 104.9 FM WRBB. I'm Chris, here with my co-host Julia.
Hi everybody.
And we're sitting down at the Paradise Rock Club with Gareth from Los Campesinos.
Hello there.
So before we begin the interview, I'd just like to say thank you for sitting down, making time to
pleasure.
do this with us.
Problem at all.
So the first thing I want to ask you is, where does the name come from, Los Campesinos?
Well, when the band was formed, like 6 years ago, Neil was at the time reasonably fluent in Spanish, which is a skill that he's lost over the past few years due to lack of practice and too much drinking. Just, I guess it was just for a British tongue, it's quite an exotic name, and I think we never really expected to be in a situation where we'd ever have to justify or explain why we record it, because we didn't expect to have any level of success at all. So it's the sort of thing that if we'd have known, perhaps we would have chosen something a bit better. But as it is, we're stuck with it. And
do you have any idea what the other name would be if you chose something else?
None at all. I wasn't even in the band when they came up with that name. At that point, they were just practicing and hanging out and jamming and stuff, and it was just like Neil, Tom, and Ellen. So I'm happy to have not had any part in the deciding the name, because it means I can just blame it on them. But if I'm sure at the time I would have come up with something terribly cringeworthy.
What about the stage last names, Gareth Campesinos?
Primarily so that people can't stalk us on Facebook. But, it just I don't know. It just seemed playful and fun at the time, and now it's nice because it is harder for people to find me on Facebook, which is where I can just hide away from things and be obnoxious and not worry about any comeback. So no, it just works. It suits. It ties it all together.
Okay. So the band was formed while you were all attending university. Mm-hmm. Now, when you started to get a little bit more serious about the band while you were still in school, did you ever find it difficult to balance school and the band?
No, not really, because like I say, it was never. The band never seemed like a priority. It was always just a hobby. And although things did happen incredibly quickly, when we had reading weeks or long weekends off, we would do tours or release a single or something. And the record label that we signed with in the UK, Wichita, were very understanding that we we were prioritising university and finishing that and sort of sorting out our long term. So no, it was. I guess there was that distraction there, but also it was just the excitement of knowing that once university did finish, we had something to. I think the summer that we finished university, we went straight to Canada to record Hold On My Youngster. So and like we released the EP whilst we were still at university, and just getting like Pitchfork reviews and stuff whilst we were still going to lectures and things. Right. It was incredibly, and like being in like photographed in the NME and stuff was amazing. But we've always been very level-headed about it, and as a result, we managed to mostly remain concentrated on university.
Good priorities, wow. So I want to talk about the instrumentation.
Cool.
Is there a reason you guys decided to incorporate the glockenspiel into it?
I just had one, and at the time because I was I joined a little bit later and sort of was listening to the instrumentals that they'd written and sort of coming up with lyrics or working out, whether, and at the time we did some instrumental songs and stuff, and I owned the glockenspiel somehow. I'm not even entirely sure where it came from, and so I just took that along, so I had something to mess about with whilst they were playing, so I wasn't just sat there doing nothing, and it kind of stuck. And I don't like the glockenspiel one bit. I think it's a terrible instrument. It takes absolutely no skill or ability to play it, and I'm sick of it by now.
You make it sound so good.
Yeah. I think it's probably the one instrument that it sounds exactly the same whoever's playing it. It's a horrible instrument. But yeah, and I guess for better or for worse, we have come to be associated.
You're stuck with it now.
Yeah. Well, kind of no, because it's getting pushed to the back more and more. It's that we played a gig in Japan in November where we forgot to take a glockenspiel, like genuinely just forgot.
Wow.
And so we did a gig about Glockenspiel, and it was absolutely fine. I might accidentally start forgetting it a little bit more often.
So you said when you started out, it was more of just a fun thing on the side. Did you ever think that you'd be this successful with it?
Oh no, not at all. And I think that's part of the reason why we have been successful, because I think a lot of people start bands thinking that they're going to make it big and that it's going to make them money, and we never thought that it would, and sure enough it hasn't. But but I think the fact that we had no expectations meant that it was just enjoyable, and we didn't have any pressure on ourselves, and everything that we've achieved since, I mean, been doing this full time for like 6 years now is an amazing achievement. Was there ever a moment that made you realize that you had made it, so to speak? There have been like highlights. I mean, like yesterday we did David Letterman, and that's the sort of thing that is just like a real milestone in the band's history, and just a couple of other TV appearances that we've done in the UK. The Budweiser commercial as well is another one that's been like, wow, this is amazing. And things like Lollapalooza and playing big stages at Glastonbury Festival and things like that are all things that sort of make you stop and check and think, wow, we've done this. But again, because we've never allowed ourselves to get carried away with it, these things are all just, there's lots of smaller or bigger things that seem as important and as exciting, because everything that we've achieved has been a bonus on what we expected.
Very cool.
So now that you've gotten a little bit bigger, you must get a lot more attention from the press and just from people in general. How have you adjusted to that?
It's so minimal that it doesn't take any adjustment. It genuinely, it's not like we get recognised or anything like that. And whenever we have like press interviews and stuff, it's always, you know, like before shows or phonos that are organised in advance and stuff. So it's not, it doesn't feel like any degree of notoriety or fame at all. It's all just part and parcel of. It's another thing that makes us feel flattered that people care, and but it's certainly not an inconvenience or anything.
No stalkers yet?
No, not internet stalkers. Yes, but nothing in person, thankfully.
So the band just released a new album, Hello Sadness. And as I was listening to it, the first thing I noticed is that it didn't sound like Hold On Now Youngster. It had its own sound. How do you think the band has evolved since the first album?
Well, I think Hold On Now Youngster was released in the beginning of 2008, so got recorded summer before that, so talking, most of those songs would have been written 5 years ago by now, and I'm 26 now, and I feel 26, and just, I'm a completely different person to what I was 5 years ago. So it's an inevitability that I think over a 5 year period of time, you're going to, especially that 5 year period of time, finishing university, having sort of taken on actual responsibilities and going through real life experiences, rather than being sort of protected by full-time education and stuff. So it's inevitable that the music would change. I think I can appreciate why people like Hold On Now Youngster, but if we were to try to replicate that, it would be lying, because we don't have that sort of excitement towards life that we once did, and we'd be a little bit more world-weary and jaded, just as anybody who's in their late 20s would do. Right. So we've just tried to, I think it's never been a case that we've been like, we want to write like this now, or we want to change this. It's always been a natural evolution that's developed, like our music's developed as we've developed personalities-wise and things like that. So, yeah.
How do you think your artistic vision for the band has changed over those 5 years?
I don't think it would be a case of us even having an artistic vision, because we just do what as it comes naturally. So we try not to overthink things. There was a time at the beginning of the band where I did sort of try to second guess what people wanted from Los Campesinos and what people expected me to be like lyrically, and as a result there were a couple of songs that I feel a bit embarrassed by now, and because I was trying too hard or something. So by now everything that happens we just let happen naturally, and so I think we just like to sort of vision-wise for the band, we're really happy with the sort of feeling that we've created around our band, like a sense of unity, and I think our gigs are, my favourite things about our gigs is that there is this real sense of camaraderie and everyone being in it together sort of thing, which is great and makes it so enjoyable. But as for an artistic vision, I think just to carry on reacting naturally to what we're doing musically and what's around us, and just keep making music without overthinking things.
So as you make your music, then you must be drawing on a huge pool of influences. What would you say are your main influences?
Well, by now, I don't really lyrically, I tend not to be influenced by other things, because I feel as though I know what I write about and what I want to write about, so I try not to be influenced by other things. I think I've tried to improve on, because I've always sort of enjoyed writing lyrics and been comfortable with writing lyrics, but I think melodically and vocally I've sort of improved over records. Sort of my singing's become a lot better, and I think the vocal melodies have improved greatly as well. And I think that's as a result of listening to a lot more R&B and hip hop music, which is primarily what I listen to, and that's sort of, I mean, the voices that a lot of R&B singers have are incredible, and I'm sort of trying to hone my voice in a similar way, and just the pop melodies and stuff that you find in music like that are just incredible, and I'm sort of trying to find those hooks. But lyrically I try not to be swayed by anything, because I just want it to be genuine and honest. And,
right.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about your lyrics for a second.
Sure.
There were a couple of tracks on your first CD that really affected me the first time I heard
Right.
them. The two that I'm thinking of in particular are You, Me Dancing and This Is How You Spell.
Cool.
There's sections in those songs where you stop singing and you go into almost like a dramatic recitation, like
Right.
you're reciting poetry.
Mm-hmm.
What led you to put that into the song?
Well, just I guess sorts of music that bands I was a fan of then, bands like Pulp would be a good example. Jarvis Cocker used the spoken word as a technique within songs to sort of create drama and sort of explain things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get across when sticking to a verse chorus structure and melodies and stuff. And bands like Arab Strap and Ball Boy that I was a massive fan of at the time. So it's just like seeing a technique that they used and then appropriating it for our band. But I think that's kind of an example of the stuff that I'm a little bit more, not so much those songs. I mean, You Me Dancing is just a hard one to get my head around at all, because that song seems like a different person wrote it and it seems so long ago. But it's still really fun to play live. But I just can't. It's really hard to go back to those songs and think, what was I thinking when that was written, sort of thing. And This Is How You. We've actually just started rehearsing This Is How You Spell again. We've not played it for a couple of years, but we're going to start playing it again just for a bit of variety and stuff. But yeah, I just think. Well, for a start, one reason I shouldn't do it is because my speaking voice is so horrible. I shouldn't really put that into the song. I should have learned that sooner. But yeah, it's just, I guess it was just a common thing used by bands that I liked, and then they say that imitation is the something as flattery. I don't know.
You mentioned that you had a couple songs you were embarrassed of.
Songs like We Throw Party for a Knives I really hate. National Tweak or Underground I think is a terrible song. When I say that I mean lyrically, because Tom writes the music, but lyrically I hate those two songs. End of the Asterisk of We Are Beautiful, We Are Doomed I really don't like. That's the main, yeah, I think that's the main three.
Just because they're so lyrically different?
We Throw Parties, You Throw Knives is just terrible. That's an example of me sort of overthinking things and trying to think, what do people want me to write about? And Tweaker as well, was intended as a joke and it got carried away, and it's still hard to convince people that it's a joke because we did play up to it so much. We don't play any of those live anymore, for better or for worse. So.
What is the creative process like? Is it different within a band with 7 members?
Not within this band. I can understand why. Well, I think most bands kind of have a core of a creative process or whatever, and then with us it's the case that Tom writes the music and I write the lyrics, and then I think with the lineup as it is now, it's the strongest lineup that we've ever had, and sort of musically the most talented and the most able. So we're in a situation now where once Tom's written these songs, we can go into a practice situation where everybody's capable of contributing their own ideas and their own suggestions and their own parts. Like having Jason on drums now is amazing because he's an incredible drummer, and he can transform songs from one thing into another, or he can really help the songs become as powerful and as fully realised as possible. So, but everybody's kind of happy with the arrangement that, generally speaking, Tom writes the music and I write the words. And I mean, Neil writes songs occasionally as well. We've used a couple of songs that Neil's written, and I think that's something that we'll do more and more in the future, because we have all improved as musicians and as songwriters. And but there's no arguments or disagreement within the seven of us as to how it's written. It's just always been the way that it's been done, and it's got us this far. So
apparently it's working. Yeah. How do you deal with writer's block?
I don't really get writer's block because I don't ever really try to write. I'm not the sort of person who would ever sit down with a pen and paper and be like, I'm gonna put these thoughts down and try to make a song. I only ever really write because I have to, because we're going into the studio to write a record. So my main motivation for writing is sort of time pressures, because it's like, oh shit, we're going into the studio and like this record has to be finished in a week's time, you have to write these lyrics, and then that's it, I can do it. So I've never really struggled, because I just kind of feel like when it comes, it comes. And I'm sure that there's bound to come a time where suddenly I just think I can't really write anymore, or I don't want to write anymore. But at the moment that doesn't seem like it's close. Like for instance, since we finished Hello Sadness, I've not attempted to write a song or anything. Now I won't do until we next are like, okay, we're going into the studio now. So that's just how it works for me. I don't like sort of taking myself so seriously as to be like, I've got to get these thoughts out, I've got to convey these feelings and stuff.
So you just mentioned Hello Sadness, which is your newest record. Can you tell us what influenced the sound of the record?
Well, I think the priority going into it, the slightly different approach that we took with this, is that previously, well, sort of looking at it in the context of coming straight after Romance is Boring. Romance is Boring was like 15 tracks long and a little, I think, overlong, and everything that was put into this. It was a case of, when we were recording, if we got to a situation when we were mixing the record and it was like, well, this guitar line, should we take it out or should we leave it in? If there was any doubt, we'd just be like, okay, we'll leave it in. Whereas this time we kind of wanted to pin everything back a bit and take out the excess in the songs and just make the songs as direct and straightforward as possible. And I think that's evident just in as simple as the fact that Hello Sadness is 10 tracks long, whereas Romance is Boring was 15. So that was our main aim, was to create something a little bit more simple, a little bit more withdrawn, I guess.
So now lyrically, where do you get the inspiration for your lyrics? Most notably on the newest album.
Well, with Hello Sadness, so like a week and a half before we went into the studio, a relationship that I was in ended. So it's very much in a situation of wanting, or if not wanting to, but being able to write about that. And I've only ever written honestly and about things that have happened in my life and blah blah blah. I don't really have the imagination to think up these grand stories about other people or anything. So I just write about what I know. So in this case, it's just a lot of songs about the breakup, about sort of aging and depression, and just simple what I know, basically.
That's one thing that I actually want to talk about, the dark lyrics. That it's actually been around. I've seen it since the beginning. You had an EP, Sticking Fingers into Sockets, EEP, We Are Beautiful, We Are Doomed, and now you have an album called Hello Sadness. Do you know you're writing sadder songs when you write these?
Yeah, I suppose so. I think we've always liked the juxtaposition of the, generally speaking, although less so currently, upbeat songs and the morbid or miserable lyrics. I think especially when performing the songs live, sort of emoting and getting these quite visceral lyrics out is when you've got this energetic backdrop of music, it makes it a really aggressive, excitable performance, so that's great. But I think again it's just I think the lyrics have become more downbeat and more miserable as I've got older, and again that's an inevitability just of being a little bit more fed up with the world and with things, so yeah.
So now that we're sort of wrapping up, I want to ask, why do you think you succeeded when others didn't? Especially when you had such a cavalier attitude towards the band.
I guess, well, I think because we've never taken it too seriously, because we've never tried to get ahead, and we've never been cutthroat about it or ruthless. We've always just enjoyed it, and I think we've made a lot of good decisions. Like we could have made a lot more money by other means, but we've always made decisions that have protected us in the long term. Like, be that the people that we've chosen to work with through management or record label, and the fact that we've always remained grounded within it, and we've not allowed ourselves to get carried away or get sucked in by any elements of debauchery or stuff. We've really just enjoyed what we do, and we've done our best to prolong it for as long as possible, and that's worked. And we're in a really great position where we still work with the same amazing people we did at the start, and they're as enthusiastic about us as they were then, and there's plenty of potential for us to go on to do more and more records.
Now, before we end the interview, I have one last quick question.
Sure.
I can't resist asking, have you ever checked your own Wikipedia pages?
Yes, and one of the worst things about the internet is that people think they know a lot more than they do, and I think Tumblr is one of the worst for that, because as soon as people put down something that they think is true, because there's an element of permanence to it, it takes on more importance than it necessarily deserves. The Wikipedia page is, I don't understand what motivates people to sort of keep Wikipedia pages updated. It's not something that I'd have the patience to do. But
so you've never edited your own Wikipedia page?
No, I think our real surnames were up there for a bit, and I deleted them. Yeah, it's I think once you start editing your own Wikipedia page, it's a slippery slope, and the more you delete things, the more people will put it up in order to annoy you. So yeah, it's best to leave.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking time to sit down with us.
No worries.
It was wonderful to get to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good show tonight.
Are you coming to the show?
I'm absolutely coming to the show.
Absolutely.